My husband cheated on me with a random woman he met in a takeaway at the end of a night out. I am 3 months pregnant. We've been together for 15 years with a toddler and an adopted teenager who is currently doing some important exams and is about to be 18 next week. I can't say a word to anyone, at least not at the moment, as I don't want to ruin my teenager's exams or her birthday. I woke up at 3 a.m. with a text from him saying, "In the takeaway, we'll be home ASAP," at 1 a.m. 2 hours had passed and he hadn't made it home, which is only 20 minutes. I messaged his 2 friends and the wives he was out with, who said they had made it home at 1:30. After driving around worrying he was dead in a ditch and calling the police to report him missing, he texted me saying, "Oh hey, sorry we all decided to stay out," despite him never doing anything like this before. I immediately knew that he was lying, because it had already been confirmed that everyone he was with was at home and had been for hours. I accused him of cheating and he flat out denied it and swore on our toddler's life. Despite me not asking for this, obviously, I would never. He got an Uber back and I waited in the driveway in the car to confront him. So we didn't wake my toddler or teenager, who I had asked to keep an ear out for the toddler. He continued to deny it, but I asked him to get the address up from the Uber, and we can go knock on the place he was hanging out and see then. He then admitted it. This was not out of the blue, not because he is the cheating type, but because he gets so drunk when he goes out. He got blackout drunk 18 months ago, and I gave him a very strict rule that he is only allowed 2 drinks on a night out, because he can't be trusted with more, which he has stuck to until now, until he always took it too far when he was younger, getting into fights. Or now he's older, just walking around with his belt undone, not being able to say words. I was worried he'd get run over stumbling into the street, or like piss himself in front of his friends or something. I at no point thought he would sleep with a random woman he met in a kebab shop. He has been sleeping in the guest house, but we have been co-parenting in the house as usual. We both work from home, and I am trying to be as normal as possible because our teenager is around and I don't want her to pick up on anything. I keep taking little breaks in the bathroom or car to cry. I'm not being my best self, but keeping it together as much as possible. He is not allowed to drink a drop until at least the baby comes, or he has been told he can go live with his mother. I have no idea what to do going forward. My teenager is due to go to university college in September, and the baby is due in December. I will have to have a C-section, and I do not know how to look after a newborn by myself while recovering. I don't know if I can or should or will forgive him. Right now, it's so tempting to just brush everything under the carpet, but I also feel like screaming. If I leave, I will be financially fine, but I don't want to date. I don't want to have to split weekends and not see my kids or deal with a stepmom, or him sliding into a depression guilt spiral and being a shoot dad. For people who have left, do you regret it? Would life have been easier / better / something if you'd stayed? Do you love it? Is it amazing? For people who stayed, do you regret it? Is it weird? Did you love them the same after time? Can it ever recover? Did it all go to shoot anyway? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Being in a home with 2 parents who clearly did not respect each other and resented each other was far more damaging than having my parents be separated. He cheated on you while pregnant with your child. This was not the first time. He didn't even confess of his own volition, meaning he would still be happily cheating on you if he hadn't been caught. Remember that. Trust is broken. Him sliding into a depression guilt spiral is not on you. If anything, it's not guilt. It's just him being sorry he got caught. He did this not only to you, but to your child and your future child. This man is not a good person. Comment 2. It's really got to be up to you, but someone that doesn't work their butt off to understand why they cheated on their partner and won't ever be a good partner going forward, even if you forgive and move on. Cheating on your pregnant partner is the lowest of the low, scumbag. But it's also super gross to go out and get super drunk while you have a pregnant wife and kid at home. He put himself in danger, you in danger, get tested, and strain his relationship with you and his kids. That's selfish as frick. He shouldn't be drinking at all if he can't control himself. That's alcohol abuse. Update me. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So, a week has passed since I found out about my husband's infidelity, and things have been, well, interesting. The first couple of days were the hardest. I was trying to keep everything together for the sake of our teenager's exams and upcoming birthday. I had to act like everything was normal, which was exhausting. I kept taking breaks to cry in the bathroom or the car, just to let out some of the frustration and sadness. On the third day, something unexpected happened. My husband came to me and said he wanted to talk. I was hesitant, but I agreed. He told me he had been thinking a lot about what he did and how it affected our family. He admitted that he had a drinking problem and that he needed help. He asked if I would support him in going to therapy and attending AA meetings. I was taken aback. I didn't expect him to take responsibility so quickly. I agreed, but I told him that it didn't change what he did and that I still needed time to figure out what I wanted. The next day, he started therapy and went to his first AA meeting. He came back looking more determined than I've seen him in a long time. He apologized again and said he was committed to changing. I could see he was serious, but I still couldn't shake the betrayal. Meanwhile, our teenager's exams were going on, and I was doing my best to keep the house running smoothly. I was so focused on keeping up appearances that I almost forgot about my own needs. I realized I needed someone to talk to, so I reached out to a close friend. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was going through a tough time. She was supportive and offered to help with the kids if I needed a break. It was a small relief, but it meant a lot. As the week went on, I noticed my husband was really trying. He was more present with the kids, helping with homework, and even cooking dinner a few times. It was strange seeing him like this. But it also made me question if he could really change. I wanted to believe it, but I was still hurt. On the sixth day, something happened that threw me for a loop. I found a letter in his jacket pocket. It was from the woman he cheated with. She apologized for what happened and said she didn't know he was married. She mentioned that she had been going through a tough time and that their encounter was a mistake. She also said she was moving out of town and hoped we could find it in our hearts to forgive her. Reading that letter brought up a lot of emotions. I was angry, sad, and confused. But it also made me realize that my husband wasn't the only one at fault. It was a complicated situation and there were no easy answers. The next day was our teenager's birthday. We had a small celebration at home, and I did my best to make it special. My husband was on his best behavior, and for a moment it felt like things were normal. But I knew we still had a long way to go. As I was cleaning up after the party, my husband came up to me and said he wanted to show me something. He took me to the guest house and handed me a journal. He said he had been writing in it since the day he started therapy. He wanted me to read it to see his thoughts and feelings. I was hesitant, but I agreed. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat down and read the journal. It was filled with raw, honest entries about his struggles with alcohol, his guilt over what he did, and his determination to change. It was hard to read, but it also gave me a glimpse into his mind. I could see he was genuinely trying to be better. As the week came to an end, I found myself at a crossroads. I still didn't know if I could forgive him, but I could see he was making an effort. I decided to take things one day at a time and see where it led us. Looking back, I realized that our relationship had been strained for a while. We had been so focused on the kids and our daily routines that we forgot to take care of each other. His drinking was a symptom of a bigger problem, and it was something we both needed to work on. I also thought about my own past. Growing up, my parents had a tumultuous relationship. They fought a lot, and it affected me deeply. I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted to break the cycle and create a loving, stable environment for them. But I also knew that staying in a broken relationship wasn't the answer. So here we are a week later. My husband is in therapy and attending AA meetings. I'm trying to figure out what I want and how to move forward. It's not easy, and there are no guarantees. But for now, we're taking it one day at a time. Thanks for reading. Aita for telling my wife to stop acting like Brad's overbearing mom. My brother-in-law, Brad, has had a tough couple of years, both in terms of work and relationships. It got to the point where he was just sitting around in his apartment, watching TV and living off his life savings, which would soon get depleted. We invited him to live with us until he got back on his feet. I love him, and My wife has always been very attached to her brother. Her relationships with her parents have had a lot of rough patches, but her brother has always supported her and vice versa. At that moment, he was in a rough patch, so we didn't mind looking after him. We cooked most of his meals, refused any money he offered us as rent, and she even did his laundry the first few times before he insisted he'd do it himself. After 2 months of living with us, he got a call for a new job, and he wanted to leave right from the get-go. My wife argued he should stay with us until his first few paychecks came in, and how we didn't want him to leave. Brad had a drawn-out conversation with his little sister about how he needed to be back on his own, and that it was a trustworthy colleague who got him the job offer, and he was sure it'd be a safe and sure thing. Just viewing as a third party, I was fine with him staying longer, but also fine with him leaving. My wife did seem genuinely concerned over him being alone again, but it also felt like she was personally hurt by him leaving as soon as he could. It's been 5 weeks now, and she's gotten grouchy and resentful that we no longer spend time with Brad 24/7, talking about how his fake friends are all Brad cares about. Despite how they ditched him when he was down, they didn't. They'd call and text, and he'd tell them he wasn't in the mood to hang out, and basically acting like a smothering mother who's angry a bird left the nest. Despite this being her older brother, I don't even know how to tackle this. I've tried to ask her if maybe having her only sibling living with her for the first time since they were kids maybe triggered something. He was the golden child, and as a kid she'd flip-flop between hating him for that to loving him for actually standing up for her and always being supportive. Or if maybe she had mentally prepared herself for him to stay with us longer and feeling out of sorts over him seemingly leaving from one day to the next. But she stonewalls me every time and just paints herself as a good sister who's preparing for the worst. But she's gotten to the point where she let a comment slip saying she hopes he can live with us again, which I had to point out meant she was wishing for him to spiral into depression again. And she'd just sheepishly say she didn't mean it like that. How can I make her see she's developed a very toxic and possessive attachment to her own brother? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. That makes more sense why you're concerned then. That makes this a trickier conversation to have with her. It sounds like she's not willing to admit to having a codependent relationship with her brother. If she's not willing to admit it, there's not a lot you can do besides be there for her and continue to do what you're doing. Hopefully she adjusts to the change before too long. In the meantime, I just do your best to keep her mind off this disappointing part of her life and continue to offer to talk about things in hopes for whenever she's ready to process things a bit deeper. Continue to defend your brother and his friends in a lighthearted way. But I wouldn't make it a hill to die on if I were you. Therapy would probably help her, but folks usually need to figure out they need therapy on their own if it's going to make a difference. I wish I had more to offer, but that's all I've got. Good luck. Comment 2. Ooh, I could edit that line. I definitely worded it wrong. I meant in this situation, she's having a classic rescuer response. I can't know that she's a through-and-through rescuer, and that's why I was trying to include, it could just be the situation and or due to the dynamics of the relationship with her brother that it's coming out. But you may also notice it in other areas. I even had the thought after my comment that her speaking poorly of his friends and what you described in that paragraph is shifting into the persecutor response of belittling and being overly critical when rescuing stopped satisfying, whichever need it was. But really it comes down to there's an unmet need or unresolved emotion under the surface that until she is ready to talk about, she'll probably cycle around like this for a while. So, good on you for continuing to communicate and try to think of ways to help support her. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So, 3 months have passed since Brad moved out and things have been pretty eventful. My wife's mood swings have only gotten worse. She's been more irritable and distant, and it's starting to affect our relationship. I tried to talk to her about it again, but she just brushed me off, saying she was fine and that I was overreacting. But I knew something was up. One night, Brad called us out of the blue. He sounded really excited and wanted to share some news. He told us he had met someone at his new job, and they had been dating for a few weeks. He wanted us to meet her. My wife's reaction was immediate and intense. She was visibly upset and tried to hide it, but it was clear she was not happy about this new development. She made some excuse about being busy and said she couldn't make it to the dinner Brad was planning. I decided to go alone, thinking it might help ease the tension. Brad's new girlfriend, Emily, was lovely. She was kind, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Brad looked happier than I had seen him in years, but as the evening went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that my wife's absence was a dark cloud hanging over the night. When I got home, my wife was waiting for me. She bombarded me with questions about Emily, and it was clear she was fishing for something negative. When I told her how nice Emily was, she seemed to get even more upset. She started ranting about how Brad was moving too fast and how he always made poor decisions when it came to relationships. It was like she was trying to convince herself more than me. A few days later, Brad called again, this time sounding worried. He said my wife had been sending him long, emotional texts about how she felt abandoned and how she didn't trust Emily. Brad was confused and didn't know how to respond. He asked me to talk to her, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. I confronted my wife about the texts, and she broke down. She admitted she felt like she was losing her brother and that she was scared he would get hurt again. She also confessed that she had always felt a sense of responsibility for Brad, especially after their parents' messy divorce. She had been the one to pick up the pieces and support him, and now she felt like she was being pushed aside. This revelation was a turning point for me. I realized that my wife's behavior was rooted in deep-seated issues from their childhood. She had always been the caretaker, and now that Brad was finding his own way, she felt lost and irrelevant. I suggested she see a therapist to work through these feelings, but she was resistant at first. She didn't want to admit she needed help. Meanwhile, Brad was trying to navigate his new relationship while dealing with the emotional baggage from his sister. Emily was supportive, but it was clear the situation was taking a toll on her as well. She confided in me that she was worried about Brad's mental health and didn't want to come between him and his sister. One evening, things came to a head. My wife and I had a huge argument about Brad and Emily. She accused me of not understanding her and taking Brad's side. In the heat of the moment, she blurted out that she felt like she had lost her only family. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just upset about Brad moving out or dating someone new. She was grieving the loss of the close bond they had shared when he was living with us. I took a deep breath and tried to calm her down. I told her that she hadn't lost her brother, but that their relationship was evolving. I reminded her that Brad was happy and that she should be happy for him too. It was a tough conversation, but it seemed to get through to her. Over the next few weeks, my wife started seeing a therapist. It wasn't an overnight fix, but it was a step in the right direction. She began to understand that her possessiveness was unhealthy and that she needed to let Brad live his own life. She also started to work through her own issues from their childhood, which was a huge breakthrough. Brad and Emily continued to grow closer, and eventually my wife agreed to meet her. It was a bit awkward at first, but they slowly started to get along. My wife even apologized to Brad for her behavior, which was a big deal. Brad was understanding and reassured her that he still loved her and valued their relationship. As for me, I've been trying to support my wife while also maintaining my own sanity. It's been a challenging few months, but I feel like we're finally making progress. My wife is starting to see that she doesn't need to control Brad's life to be a good sister. She's learning to let go and trust that he can take care of himself. Thanks for reading. Aita for blaming myself for an STI mix-up that exposed my cheating boyfriend. I, 19-year-old female, recently went to Planned Parenthood because I wanted to get put on birth control. They had me do a sexually transmitted infection screening as well, which is fairly normal. I didn't think much of it, but that was my mistake. I got the birth control and everything went pretty well, but I got my sexually transmitted infection screening back, and it came back positive for chlamydia. My heart dropped when I saw it on my screen. I thought back for a while and realized I most likely got it from an old coworker I had intimacy with back before I got with my current boyfriend, 18-year-old male of 8 months. I ended things with the coworker because I just genuinely didn't see it going anywhere, and he only wanted to see me during the night. So, with all of this in mind, I called my boyfriend and told him the news and broke it down for him. I know my boyfriend didn't give it to me because the last girl he did anything with was roughly 4 years ago. So I got him tested and the doctor put him on doxycycline, the same thing as me. The doctor put him on the meds before the test results came back because he said he got exposed to it. But we just got his test results back today and they were negative. I saw his screen and I lost it. I've been faithful to him since the beginning of our relationship. I dream of marrying this man. I see my entire future with him. He's what love is to me. We went through a lot together and we trust each other. I cried because I didn't know what else to do. We were cuddling when I saw it, so he comforted me, and we talked after I calmed down. I told him I never did anything with anyone else while with him, and that I don't know what's going on. I explained that I would never do that to him, and that he's all I want. He looked upset, but I can understand why. He asked if I was telling the truth, and I said, I have no reason to lie to you. I'd tell you the truth even if it made me look bad. He said okay, followed by, but if you did do something, now's the best time to tell me. And once again, I said I didn't. So we dropped it. We cuddled a little longer, then I took him home. We hugged, and I said I'd look into it more, and that I love him and thanked him for trusting me. He said no problem, and that was that. I'm overall just really nervous, and I wanted to see what other people thought, since I'm scared of explaining it to my friends. Any advice or questions would be appreciated. Thank you, 3. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This happened to me when I was younger. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, tested negative, even though I tested positive first. I assumed I got it from an ex-boyfriend with whom I had unprotected intimacy. My husband hadn't slept with anyone aside from me, so I have no idea how his test showed negative, but it did. We both took medicine, and the rest is history. Comment 2. Testing positive for an STI can be mentally taxing, but I think it's worth noting that chlamydia is fully treatable. In fact, because you got treated, there are no long-term implications for your health or your boyfriend's health. Stay positive. You got treated and your boyfriend trusts you. This is nothing more than a teeny tiny bump for your relationship. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the comments on my last post. So, 3 months have passed since that whole ordeal with the STI test. Things have been pretty hard on us, to say the least. After that initial scare, my boyfriend and I tried to move on, but it wasn't easy. He was supportive at first, but I could tell he was still suspicious. We had a few arguments about it, but I kept reassuring him that I hadn't cheated. I even went back to Planned Parenthood to get retested, and the results came back negative, which was a relief. But the damage was already done. About a month ago, my boyfriend started acting distant. He would cancel plans last minute, and when we were together, he seemed distracted. I tried talking to him about it, but he always brushed it off, saying he was just stressed about school and work. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, I decided to surprise him by showing up at his place with his favorite takeout. When I got there, I saw him through the window, sitting on the couch with another girl. They were just talking, but it felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't confront him right then. Instead, I went home and cried myself to sleep. The next day, I asked him about the girl. He said she was just a friend from one of his classes, and that they were working on a project together. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more and more signs that something was off. He was always texting someone, and he would get defensive if I asked who it was. I felt like I was losing him, and it was tearing me apart. Then, 2 weeks ago, things came to a head. We were out at a party, and I saw him talking to the same girl again. This time, they were standing really close, and she was laughing at something he said. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked up to them and asked him what was going on. He got angry and said I was being paranoid. We had a huge fight right there in front of everyone. He accused me of not trusting him, and I accused him of cheating. It was a mess. After that night, we didn't talk for a few days. I was miserable and I missed him so much. I decided to give him some space, hoping he would come around. But then, a few days later, I got a message from one of his friends. She told me that my boyfriend had been seeing the other girl behind my back. I felt like my world was falling apart. I confronted him about it, and he finally admitted that he had been seeing her for the past month. He said he was confused and didn't know what he wanted. I was devastated. We broke up that night. I couldn't believe it was over. I had been so sure that he was the one, and now it felt like my future had been ripped away from me. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to process everything. I felt betrayed and heartbroken. I couldn't understand how he could do this to me after everything we had been through. In the midst of all this, I started thinking about my past relationships and how they had shaped me. I remembered my old coworker, the one I had slept with before getting with my boyfriend. I realized that I had a pattern of getting involved with guys who weren't good for me. My coworker had only wanted to see me at night, and my boyfriend had been seeing someone else behind my back. I started to wonder if there was something wrong with me, if I was somehow attracting these kinds of relationships. I also thought about my family and how their relationships had influenced me. My parents had a rocky marriage, and I had always been afraid of ending up like them. I wanted so badly to have a stable, loving relationship, but it seemed like I was doomed to repeat their mistakes. I felt like I was stuck in a cycle that I couldn't break. As I was dealing with all of this, I got a call from my doctor. They had reviewed my initial STI test results and found that there had been a mix-up. My positive result had actually been someone else's. I was relieved to know that I hadn't had chlamydia, but it didn't change the fact that my relationship was over. I felt like I had lost everything for nothing. Looking back, I can see that there were signs that my relationship was in trouble long before the STI scare. My boyfriend and I had our issues, and the trust between us had been eroding for a while. The STI test was just the final straw that pushed us over the edge. I wish I had seen it sooner, but I was too caught up in my own fears and insecurities to notice. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces and move on. It's not easy, but I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm focusing on myself and trying to figure out what I want in a relationship. I know I need to work on my own issues before I can have a healthy relationship with someone else. It's a long road, but I'm determined to get there. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.